Hello everyone, and welcome back to Crowley House Flower Farm and Nursery. Today I'm working on a project that I've wanted to get to for a very long time. Behind me you can see this long border that we ended up a couple years ago. We had some soil brought in for the raised beds behind me because we have a little bit of a water issue back here in the back property area, that in the wintertime we get a lot of rain and then we get some puddling and things like that. And a lot of times I'm putting in cool flowers, which are flowers that we seed now actually. And this is the end of July, 1st of August, and that we plant out and they get established enough to then provide beautiful blooms early spring. So anyways, they have to keep their feet a little bit drier than they would normally. So we had these raised beds, we had a big truck come in and fill soil, and we had some left over. And there's this little berm here right next to the greenhouse that I thought, they said, where do you want to put the soil? And it's really good sandy loam, it's just beautiful soil. So I ended up having them put it here so that I could try my hand at what we call dry gardening or water-wise gardening. So this is all stuff that technically does not need a lot of water or no water throughout the summer, and that once established. So sometimes when I'm planting in something new, it will need water for the first year or so for it to just get established. And then once it's established, it's fine. You can just kind of walk away and leave it. Water-wise gardening is a trend that started many years ago, and it's where people, especially in warmer, hotter climates, Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, some of these climates that just don't get a lot of rain, will put in a type of style of garden which is water-wise or a dry garden. And these are things that, you're looking for things that are native, that just grow without, water, or some people live in a climate where they get a lot of water in the summertime. Here in Oregon, even though we're a maritime climate, technically, we're a zone 8B, but we've been slowly going into a 9, so we can kind of go between the two. We still get some cold winters or some cold winter days that some of our plants may or may not make it as a zone 9, so we're just a little more careful. But anyways, this garden here is what my idea was, is because we do have a dry season and a wet season here in Oregon, that I wanted to have a garden that I could just walk by, it looks pretty, and I don't need to do anything with it. So I've planted a lot of things that don't need a lot of water, or things that once established don't need a lot of water. So today what my plan is I'm going to clean this out. I have just some weeds in there. Obviously it's a new bed, a lot of weeds. I'm going to clean that out, and then I'm going to plant in a few things that I have from the nursery that once established will just be happy as can be in there. And the nursery is technically closed for this season until fall. So we just have some extra things that I thought I would pop into this garden, and let's just get it prettied up together. So we have an absolutely gorgeous day here at Crowley House. I came to work early, except for my car had a no battery, so Jason had to help me jump it. Normally I do it myself, but it was a little bit, I had to do it the old-fashioned way. And so anyways, it's a long story, so I'm late, but it's still really beautiful. I was trying to beat the heat, and I think the high is like 87 or something like that today, but that's later this afternoon. So I'm going to try and get this project done early, get all the weeds controlled, and then we're going to plant some stuff together and talk about what I'm planting and why. So Jason and I got some of these old drain tile terracottas from another farm that was just giving them away, and I thought they would be really fun to put some sort of, like succulents or something like that. So I haven't planted those. I'm going to try and get to that today. We'll see. You can see just some sunflowers that randomly came up, some olive trees. There's 2 olive trees. There's this one here, and I have another one way out there. But the sunflowers were just seeded in. We have some yarrow, which is kind of like a native yellow yarrow. It's nothing super attractive, but it does not need a lot of water. So that's really nice. And then we have just some random things that came back from last year. This is a scoop scabiosa, which is really fun. I love it combined with that yellow. It's looking really, really pretty. I love that. We also have some Mexican hat that we seeded last year, so I have kind of that speckled through. There's just a few white, I think out there, yeah, you can kind of see it, some white cosmos that we had some extra. This is kind of like my garden that I put all kinds of things in, and just anything that we don't have a home for, and so I just kind of have popped it in here and there. We have a small stand of feverfew, and then these are just some Shasta daisies that have lived their best life and now need to be taken out or cut back. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for the garden. That's all I have in it right now. So I'm just gonna get it weeded up here and then see about planting in some grasses and things like that. So when you're choosing plants, and in my case, I want to have a little bit more of a Mediterranean feel, you want to look for a couple things. Things that on the tag says water-wise or once established doesn't need a lot of water. The other thing I look for is things like that have kind of a juicier leaf. When I say juicier leaf, that means that it's got a little more substance to it. So it's gonna hold moisture in their leaves when it's hot. Things like, let's look through the nursery and see what we can find. Okay, so this is one thing that I'm going to be planting. It already bloomed a really pretty pink bloom, but this is a sedum by Monrovia, which is really fun. We love working with them. This is Spot On Stone Crop, which is really pretty. It's kind of got this magenta type bloom on it, and it's already bloomed out, so I'm going to be planting this in my dry garden. But you can tell it's kind of got a leaf on it that's a little bit more spongy or plasticky, I guess you want to say. So anyways, I'm going to be putting this in as a ground cover because it does not look very good here. The other thing I'm going to be planting is this one here, which is a sedum. And sedums are some of my favorite things to grow, but this blooms really, really pretty, and I like that dark chocolate. We have more of this on the farm for a cut. Actually makes for a great cut. So this is Evolution Chocolate Fountain Sedum. So this is really, really nice, and you can tell that it's got that plasticky, kind of very thick, juicy, so it holds moisture in the leaves. So that's what you're kind of looking for. So the other thing I'm going to be planting in the dry garden is this lavender that we seeded, and I'm not sure the variety. There's so many different varieties, but that we just had a couple of these guys left, and so I thought to just pop them in the garden as well. And here in the Pacific Northwest, we can grow rosemary like you wouldn't believe. I mean, look at the size of this bush. It is absolutely huge, and we have them all around the circle garden. So again, any of these things, this is goldenrod. It has just, I don't ever water that, and it's just about ready to bloom. This is an iris that is a beautiful one. We just replanted this stand. These came from Shriner's Iris Gardens, and they are kind of a peachy brown color, really pretty, but they'll bloom in spring. But you can tell that the leaf on it is thick, and that holds moisture in that, and it also holds it in the tuber itself, which if you dug down, these are barely under the soil. That really thick tuber there is what will hold moisture. So you can tell the ground is just really, really dry here. But anyways, so that is what I'm looking for in a plant that will do well in a dry garden. Also native. So this is a mullein, which is medicinal. So any of these herbs do really well. So the rosemary, mullein, we have a few more herbs down here. I think there's some oregano popping in there. I need to cut it back. But you can tell yarrow just does really, really well. This garden hardly gets any water at all either. Lilac. So here's one of those chocolate sedums, and it's doing great this year. We've got them kind of speckled through this garden. I like adding that dark color to it. So here we have another sedum. This is the one that you see a lot of times traditionally, which is Autumn Joy, I believe. And this one gets kind of, it goes from that pink, kind of blushy to like a rose color. If you can kind of see that, it's really pretty. And this one gets pretty tall. This one we use a lot for cut flower, and this stand was here when I came. So, but you can tell the leaf on it as well is very, very spongy and holds a lot of moisture for it. These are great because they're just kind of like, you don't really have to fuss over them. Sometimes they'll get aphids, but not very often. Anyways, they're great for corsage work and things like that. So we use it a lot for just, especially in the fall when it turns color. It's so pretty. So in here we have a whole bunch of succulents and aeoniums and all kinds of stuff, but look at that. So some of these are tropical, and we could pull them out in the summertime and put them in the garden, and they would love that. and then others won't do so well. So I've got to pick and choose what I want to plant out of here that will come back every year. And then next year I'm going to plant some pots along it in kind of like these more Mediterranean style terracotta. As you know, I love terracotta, but kind of pulling some of these out in the summer. And I think they would love being out of the little greenhouse. So before my mom died, she planted up all these little succulents, and I've never taken them out of their little box, but it just reminds me of her. So I just kind of leave them and I keep watering them. But aren't they fun? So she would always propagate for us, and deadhead roses. And so this time of year we miss her. This cactus came from my grandma, who was down in Texas, and she had this at one of her homes. And my sister Amber took a cutting of it for her house in Canada. And now I took a cutting, snuck it back here, and it's starting to grow. Finally, it looks amazing. Okay, let's get to work. Things to consider when you're thinking about putting in a dry garden or have a spot in your garden that is a little bit dry. You want to use things like rock, maybe a dry creek bed, or something that even if you had like a water issue in one area of the garden but dry in other areas, you could actually use that dry garden bed in the winter time as a funnel to collect water or to help channel it out, and then be able to plant around it as a dry garden or a semi-dry garden. So it doesn't have to be completely dry to be able to achieve this look. I think the idea behind it is that it's low maintenance, that you can enjoy it as you walk by, and you might have to pull a few weeds here and there as it gets established. You also might consider planting in some native plants, things that you see naturally around you. So as you're driving about, kind of look around at other gardens and see, or along the roadside, what is natively growing in your area. Things that will do really, really well without water, or in your own climate with the amount of water that you do get and the amount of sun. Other things to consider are adding in some winter interest or even fall interest. By adding in some of those grasses, you get that amazing fall foliage, and with the airy plumes and things like that. You also are able to help feed the birds, give them a place to eat and to rest. And there's nothing more beautiful than seeing a bird pecking away at your dry grass in the wintertime with a bit of frost covering them. You can always cut them down in January or February, and that gives you an outdoor job unless you have a lot of snow, which here in Oregon we do not. We are able to garden year-round here in the Pacific Northwest, at least in my area where I am. And so thinking about the garden year-round and the garden interest is super important for me because I want it to look pretty year-round. You can consider putting in some evergreens, things maybe even with a berry on it or something like that, especially if you're in an area that has a lot of snow. Thinking about that bright pop of berry that again would feed the birds is a really cool thing. So, and it's also very entertaining, and I don't know, it just does something for you in the winter when you're not able to get your hands in the soil. These gardens take years to kind of evolve, and there's things that you can try and see if it works, and then sometimes they will die or fail. It's a small scientific experiment for me, especially to see what will live and what will die. And I'm just popping in things in the garden and seeing if they'll just kind of acclimate to the climate and not need a lot of care. Do a little bit of research on dry gardens or Mediterranean style gardens where they will talk a little more in depth on how to put one together, even if it's just a small spot in your garden. I would suggest to give it a go because it is so rewarding to have this amazing, beautiful look, which is very different than like what I like to do, which is more of the cottage style gardening that takes a lot of water. But I wanted to see what I could do here in this garden to kind of achieve a cottage garden feel, or still my style, but yet with no water or very little water once established. So I'm having a lot of fun doing this project, and I know it's going to take years to kind of fulfill and fill out, but I think in the end it's going to be amazing. So even though you can't tell really, but I'm making good progress, just kind of going along this rock border. Like I said, I'm gonna have Keith come in with a string trimmer and just kind of tidy this up, and then we'll mow. But I still have the other side to do, so I'm gonna come back through that way and then kind of get it all weeded out. Gardening is a labor of love. You have to love what you're doing. And I think sometimes people get into gardening and don't realize how much physical work it is and whether or not they can do it. But I learned over the years that when I first started going back to the gym, it was hard to wake up early in the morning. It's hard to get to the gym. But then over time, it gets easier and easier and easier. You can lift heavier and heavier things, and your body feels so much better. So for me, gardening is like that. It is, you look at the overwhelming task of all the weeds and all the things, and you then get in there and you work and you work, and it's hard and you want to quit, but then it's like so rewarding to see it so clean, and then it stays clean for a lot longer than the house. So it's very rewarding, and then to see it develop over the years, you know, it takes years. And a lot of times they say that, you know, a gardener is gardening for a generation they will never see. So like a lot of the trees mature and that kind of thing. You're just never gonna see it fully mature, but you're doing it for other people and to bless other people. And so that's what keeps me going and inspired. I do know that if you leave a garden for very long, that it will in turn just turn to weeds and bramble. And even, I think that's the way Mother Nature is designed, is to take back what it's theirs. And then, you know, you see structures, an old barn or something, and it's got ivy growing up the side of it, or it's got blackberry, which are both not native to this area, but were planted many years ago. And you think, oh, it's just going to be taken down by these plants, and how strong they are. Anyways, those are just my thoughts today as I'm weeding away in the garden, and thought I would share what is going through my mind this beautiful morning. How much work it actually is. I'm sweating. I need to go get my water and just take a little break here in the shade. That sun is extremely, it's just very intent today. The UV rays are really, really high for sunburn, so I should probably go get some sort of hat on. Anyways, I'm halfway done with the garden, and I just need to get some clippers as well, and to be able to cut back the Shasta daisies and then some of the yarrow that's leaning over, and just get that kind of tidied up. I am gonna go get another tool as well that's a stand-up tool to be able to get into some of the tighter spaces. In this garden, we have a lot of bindweed. I'm seeing some crabgrass, and there's a lot of dandelion, which I don't mind the dandelion so much because you can use that medicinally, but there's areas that I just don't want it, so I'm pulling it out for that reason. Anyways, I am gonna go grab my water and get back to work. So this time of year, we're always cutting back things that are kind of past its prime, but this is a yarrow that's kind of a peach, really tall one. I forget the name of it, but this time of year, you can just kind of take some of the seed head, and if you like something, you can kind of sprinkle it as Mother Nature would do, just right on top of the soil. And yarrow is one of those things that doesn't need a lot of water and just kind of comes back for us here in our zone and area. So this one, I'm definitely gonna be saving seed for later. It's still blooming actually, but when you cut things back, just like salvias and things like that, they'll usually do another fall flush later in the season. But this one, I'm definitely gonna just sprinkle a few little seeds around at some other areas, because I only have one of these plants and we cut a lot off of it and it was very giving. So I do have some ordered for planting out in the gardens for cut flower production, but for this little dry garden, it did so well. I'm just gonna sprinkle seed and cross my fingers and hope it goes. We have some verbena black velvet that seeded or plugged in last year, and it has just come back gorgeous throughout this garden. And I love that combination with the yellow that it brings. And then this is just kind of this understory of beautiful velvety color. This came from our hanging baskets, and then we ended up not using all of them, so a lot of times I'll pop them into gardens. Also with the combination of the yellow sunflowers and the Mexican hat, which is just really pretty for fall. It just kind of brings that bright pop with it. This one is lacking just a little bit, so I'm gonna cut it back and give it a little haircut, and then it should rebound. So I'm about done weeding everything through, like getting all the big things out, and now I'm gonna go fine tune it and then weed around and cut around the edges, clean it up, and mow. So we have 3 of these guys, which are the tiling. They used to use them back in the 1950s for tiling fields. Now they have better systems, but this one that's laying down is meant to go down further in the garden as garden art. So this is kind of my love of finding unusual things to add to the garden, or a DIY garden, you know, repurposing garden art and just kind of having fun with it. So my idea is that it's gonna go right down here, kind of where I pulled that huge weed out. I'm thinking to plop it in here somewhere, maybe here, but I'm gonna try and move it myself. I'm not sure where, but I've got to tuck it in, and then we'll see how it looks. Okay, so I got my terracotta thing moved. I had to just kind of do it so that I could actually do it by myself. So I just kind of rolled it, or kind of turned it one end over end. It was super heavy. So now what I'm gonna do is dig a little hole and place it in. I just got a shovel. I might use a post hole digger, we'll see. The earth is really hard right now. So I'm just gonna make it deep enough to where I can put something in it. So just at least secure it so it doesn't fall over. Great, I'm getting there. Whew, a lot of work. All right, I don't think I need to do an adjustment. I should go get the level. This is gonna look really good. Let's look from this side. So we've got the 2 on this side, and then this one. This is just slightly higher because it's up higher on the hill, but I think that's gonna look gorgeous. Okay, I have some really cool, I don't know what it's called. It's like an agave plant. I know that Proven Winners has a new one coming out for, I saw that one of the other YouTubers was planting, and I'm thinking that I might do, I think they're agaves, right? I'm not totally for sure, but anyways, I thought to kind of put something like that in these. So I'm gonna fill it, my goal is that I'm gonna fill it, I don't think I'm gonna do it today, but I'm gonna fill in with gravel and then add in my soil pretty deep, but not the whole thing. So that's gonna come on another video. Today, I'm just gonna get this in place. That was my goal, and then I'm gonna plant a couple more grasses. And I have like some, I think I chose just a few more of the lavenders that I seeded this last year. Oh, the succulents that I'm gonna kind of put in, the sedum, which will be perfect for a dry garden. So I love how these old drain tiles just being repurposed as garden art looks in this dry garden. Amazing, it just kind of sets the vibe for my Mediterranean style dry garden that I'm going for. Okay, so I have all my holes dug for what I'm gonna put in. There was, I think what we're gonna do is put in just a few grasses, lay them out and see how we think it looks. And those are kind of the whole areas that I need to fill in. There's one more there and maybe one over here. We'll see. So the wind has kicked up a little bit this evening. I'm just getting around to planting, but I've picked a couple things. One is this really fun grass here. This is from Monrovia Nursery, but it's got these little almost like flag seed heads that last a long time, and they make great winter interest. Also, it says that it is perfect for low moisture and in the landscape with semi-evergreen. So it will be kind of a nice mounding 3x3 on this one. Blonde Ambition Blue Grama Grass, I guess is the name of it there. But this gets 3 feet tall by 3 feet wide. So this does not look very good, but this is the Spot On Pink Stone Crop, which is a kind of like a succulent type ground cover, and I had some of these left over in the nursery. They just finished blooming, so the blooms are kind of crispy. But anyways, I'm gonna try this. This is an easy care plant as well from Monrovia, and it's great for rock gardens. It's evergreen, so once it bounces back, it's gonna look amazing. So we're gonna give it a go. The other thing I grabbed was just a few of our beautiful lavenders that Keith and I seeded up over the winter, and they're looking great, so I'm gonna pop those in as well. These will all fill in really, really nicely over the years. And that's what I'm hoping, is this whole bed will just be covered, similar to a cottage garden style growing, but really nice textures. And we'll just, I don't know, we'll just see how it turns out over the year. Okay, so let's recap on everything that we did. I weeded the whole bed, and boy was that a chore, and it took me most of the day. I'm pretty hot, gross, and sweaty, and definitely need a shower. A little smelly, but we got it conquered. The other thing I did, which was another big chore, is moving that old antique drain tile that was the terracotta tile. It's from the 1950s. I moved that into place, just using what we have as far as just adding a little bit of charm to the garden with some garden art. And later I'm going to be planting those up probably next year, just with some sort of agave, which is gonna be in there. I was hoping to try and get the one that Proven Winners is coming out with this year, or this coming year, and I'm not sure if I'll get my hands on it or not, but I do have some that I've grown in the greenhouse, the little greenhouse, the one with succulents, that I might use. I'm not totally for sure. They don't look as nice as if you bought something brand new, so we'll see. Anyways, then I went over to the nursery, our little nursery that is closed for the season, but I went ahead and pulled anything that I could find that would do well in drought tolerant or has long lasting, also bird friendly. Those were all the things I was looking for. So I found a couple grasses, some lavender, and then some sedum that I popped in, and that's what I just finished with. Quite the day. Anyways, I love how it turned out, so let's take another peek. So here's the drain tile we moved into place. I just tucked in some soil around it, dug a hole, put a little bit of water just to secure it in. And then here is the first of a couple grasses, but isn't that beautiful? Just waving in the wind. It's almost a golden hour. That's how long I've been working today. We also had some lavender that I popped right through here. And then I have, let's see, another one that I popped right here. So I kind of spread them out. They're gonna fill in huge, which will also give me some evergreen interest in this garden. I love these little sunflowers. I think Keith planted those. They're just coming up really kind of short and just really pretty. But I love that through the season, the birds are just gonna love this garden as well, as much as I do. So there's another lavender there, which I forgot to water. The verbenas, which came back from last year. But anyways, here's another one of those grasses. They just look so fun. I love that top kind of waving in the wind. So fun. Another one here. So, and then over here, I just had a really hard time with the soil right here. It was just super tough. So I ended up putting the sedums down here with the other two drain tiles. And I think, you know, I watered them really, really well. I think they'll bounce back, gave them a haircut. I'm hoping they'll rebound and just kind of fill in the space. So they should touch. They're about 3 by 3, I think, when they fill in. So just a nice ground cover right there. Well, that is it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed a little bit, or learning a little bit about dry gardening or water-wise gardening, Mediterranean garden. I mean, those all kind of fall into one category. If you have any tips or tricks that you want to share, please leave a comment below. We would love to have your feedback on dry gardening or what works best in your area. Maybe you have some natives that you love, or herbs or things like that that don't take a lot of water that you found great success with that you could share with others. All right, guys, if you haven't yet, please like, subscribe. We would love to have you tag along, share it with a friend if you can. Okay, until next time, much success in all you do and grow, and we'll be seeing you shortly back here at Crowley House very, very soon. Okay, guys, until next time, bye-bye.